right, we are live. Like I said, we used to do 2 minutes of that, and we're just going to cut it short. We got to get an interview here with. I'm really glad actually that I'm able to sit down and talk with you about this. But we are this episode 110 of the Vision Quest podcast. But we are joined by none other than Martin Floriani, sir. I appreciate you joining me.
You bet, Brad. Happy to be
here.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about this. I wanted to bring you on because again, you are you are a very large name in wrestling media. You're one of the guys that started Flow Wrestling, right? You started Rockfin, and now you've got this big thing called Boutboard, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that. We're just going to lead into that a little bit. So first, let's kind of talk about how you got into sports. Like and we do this with everybody from the time you remember sports to now. So what do you remember first of what kind of sports were you in when you were a kid?
I loved football. I was like
football was your thing?
Yeah, I loved football.
Okay.
I didn't come from a wrestling background. I didn't really come from like an athletic parent household. My dad was an Italian immigrant, and I had 3 older sisters who really, they kind of did maybe, basketball in grade school or, the local rec thing for a few school teams, but nothing big. But like I was just a sport nut, and I loved football probably first and foremost.
Okay. So you mentioned that you didn't come from like a sports family either. So it wasn't a ton going on. So it sounds like it was just something that they put you in. Was it to like burn energy? Were you an energetic kid?
Yeah. I mean, they didn't put me in anything. It was just me like saying, hey, I want to sign up for this. Or this. Yeah. It was like, in the playground and then figuring out that there's teams and then like going to my mom and dad, like, hey, I want to do this. They didn't, it's like, they didn't really have any of that background. My dad was just probably more interested in academics and making sure that I was doing good in school. But yeah, that was
also important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right on. So when you, let's say getting into like high school and stuff, what were you kind of thinking of already? I mean, obviously there's sports were a little just kind of on your own thing, but I mean, when you got into high school, what were your dreams of wanting to go to college? What were your thoughts about moving on in life once you got into that area?
Oh yeah. It's just, my dad he had his own company. So I always kind of had that element, and he would come home and he would like have me read like books that were just on different entrepreneurs or interesting stories. I remember one time he would like give me like little tests on like, hey man, I saw this cool MBA test. I want you to take it. And so then like we'd talk about it. And so for a long time, like there was always a seed in my head. Like I would go and do my own thing. And he planted that seed. So that was a very strong current, I would say, growing up. But yeah, in high school, I played football at Pop Warner. I loved it. And then, but it's interesting, when you're in rec sports now, like I've seen a high level of wrestling, and I know what good training is. And there's so much in between, right? Between great training and good training and okay training. And there's different times in, different seasons in people's lives where they need different things. But I never really had much of a structure around me for that. And so after Pop Warner in high school, I went to much more academic school, which at the time didn't have football. So I was really, it was really hard or crushed, it's 8th grade crushed, freshman year crushed because I'm going to this academic school as opposed to having an opportunity to play football. So, but yeah, so that was heading into high school. My mindset.
So because you're talking a lot about business, did you wind up? So I remember when I was a kid, when I was around 12, I started a baseball card business with my brother, or not my brother, my best friend. Right. So it was literally out of his parents' basement. We just had a little sign that hung up from the side door and people came in the basement. Were you trying business, like doing little business things as a kid too? Like lemonade stands, I guess sounds a little weird.
Not really. My dad always instilled in me I have to be a good follower before I could be a good leader. And so I would work in his factory, cut and steel. And I was there with like all like the violation of so many child labor laws, I'm sure. I was there cutting, drilling, sandblasting, spot welding, all sorts of
Wow.
all sorts of things from a kid doing that on Saturdays, cleaning toilets, just cleaning the bathrooms, cleaning. So just
Man.
like all sorts of things growing in high school.
Yeah.
That was, and then in the summertime as well, just like he would just, he'd just put me to work.
Okay. So yeah, that sounds like a good old Midwestern style type. And I'm as far as wherever you were, but the Midwestern style type kind of upbringing, hard work, honesty, honest works, honest works, pay, all that stuff. So when you're in kind of going into high school now, but were you kind of getting into the business mind? Did you have an idea what you wanted to do once you got to like your sophomore, junior year? Were you thinking, yeah, I want to do what my dad does? Because man, he was working.
Yeah, I definitely had that was an element, like, because I was really close to him, and he would always, like I said, he would always talk to me about business or how I should think about things and different aspects. And so I was very connected with him. So probably a lot more than I thought that, hey man, this is, I would maybe go do what he did, or
Sure.
or work at his company, or something with him in some fashion.
Nice. Okay. I didn't ask this. Where were you? Where are you born?
Oh, Chicago, Park Ridge, Illinois.
Oh, nice. Oh man. Yeah. So you were definitely coming up, and that's crazy that you're mentioning like a manufacturing background. So I mean, to me as a kid coming up, because my dad was in manufacturing, didn't have his own company, but I basically said that I didn't want to do what my dad was doing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't. I appreciated what he
Yeah.
was doing, took the lessons, but I was like, God, he works way too hard. Like I
Yeah.
don't want to work that hard when I grow up. Like, did you wind up thinking that too?
I definitely felt like there was, as I got more distance and more educated, obviously I have very strong personality, right? So like,
Yeah.
he was an Italian immigrant, so he passed a lot of that, like very like, when people say like there's immigrant mentality, it's just kind of true. There's just a certain element of like when someone comes here and just gets to work and they don't really have much, like my grandpa coming. I mean, when you think about like someone doing that and they're like going, and then they don't have anything, they don't have much of a structure, and they just build whatever they have. There's just a certain level of like, they don't give a shit. It's kind of like,
Yep.
We're doing it. Let's go, and I think there's a certain element of where I don't have maybe the risk. I don't have the risk fear, the fear of risk of that other people have.
Okay. Yeah, because I still have that. I have that for sure.
Okay. Really?
Yeah. The risk fear is still there. Well, I mean, I doing what I do, there's a lot of things I want to do, but it's like, God, if I jump off and do that, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
I got a mortgage to pay for. I got, this to pay for. Yeah. I wanna, but I don't know if I should. So he was that whatever he taught you, you were kind of able to kind of get past that and push forward. Right.
Yeah. So I would say I have a very little risk fear, or high risk tolerance, in another way to put it. Right. And so, good and bad, it cuts for me and it cuts against me in a lot of ways too. So, so that's that. For whatever environmental factors I grew up with, I think it's definitely something I grew up with.
What were some of the more memorable things that you remember as a kid? Because I know like there, and it's not even sports for me. Like I remember being at my grandparents. Well, I'm Irish German, right? So I had grandparents that owned a tavern, and I remember 4th of July parades. I remember all that kind of crazy kind of kid stuff. But what kind of sticks out in your mind the most is from your childhood that you still take with you to this day, that kind of sticks with you?
I mean, there's a lot. I when I was growing up, I mean, there's a lot. Like, so my mom was, at the time, she was going through a lot of alcohol issues too. So when I was growing up, it was very formative years that was happening, and so that those type of struggles of like not having like having a really solid, in one way, dad, right? But a home that was very tumultuous, was difficult. She's been in AA for, I don't know, a couple decades now, so she's
good.
she's better. But that
Yeah.
was definitely a difficult time, and I think that caused some. But I was always concerned about the stability. Like, maybe in the back of my head, there was always this concern about the stability of the family, and
Sure.
I didn't have that, probably feeling that of stability and security that kids have with a good solid home,
Solid.
with
Yep.
consistency, with parents that are not drunk, that are, that have
I can relate. Yep.
structure. And so there's probably that just overall unsettledness that I remember as a kid. But I also remember having a ton of fun just playing sports and doing sports, and just wrapping myself in that as much as possible too.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Okay. So we kind of talked a little bit about high school, and we'll kind of get in towards the end of high school. Where were you? Were you in your junior year, senior year? Where were you starting to look at colleges? Were you thinking about college? Were you like, no way, once I'm done with high school, I'm done with school, I'm going to go start something?
No, college was very much like expected. And
okay.
My sister was I have three older sisters, and two of them were like outstanding students, and they went off to college. And so I was very much thinking, okay, this is where this is the next steps. I mean, really brilliant in a lot of ways. And so I always was trying to strive to meet, like kiss their bottom of their academic standards, because they had pretty high academic standards. And so, and I was, just a little bit more unorganized and didn't have what they had. So, so college was always a factor. And so, yeah, that's where,
Okay.
So I was looking to go to college, and I was expected to go to college.
Do you think ADD was a role? Do you think you had a little bit of that? I know I did. I for sure did.
What you did? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. For sure.
It could be, you know why? Because it's like, I don't know how much I believe in the whole ADD, or is it just the foods we eat? Like, we drank a ton of pop growing up, like soda.
Sure. You sure did.
I don't feed any of that to my kids.
Sure did. That's right.
I couldn't believe how much soda I drank when I was a kid. I would drink it like it was like, water. I feed my kids today, right? So it's just like, it's to me, it is pretty. I'm sure it was also probably not as bad as it is today, like the stuff that they put in it.
Sure.
But yeah, so I probably wasn't eating right. I probably wasn't sleeping right, and doing some of the core things that you need to do. So maybe ADD like-ish, like
ish. Sure. Yeah. Okay. What colleges did your sisters go to?
So my one sister got accepted to the University of Chicago, but then decided to go to University of Illinois, and then the other one got a full ride, I think, to like Boston U.
Nice.
But then she came back to Illinois as well. So they were all scholarshiped, like kids that, were, very much to look up to in that regard.
Did that sway your decision in looking for a college?
What do you mean?
Well, because your sister went to University of Illinois, you're like, I'm going to Illinois, or I'm going to Boston College.
Oh, no. I was more probably influenced by my friends at the time, my peer groups. I was more talking with them as they went to college. I was more immersed for a couple of years just with my peer groups, and kind of formed my own opinions about where I wanted to go. Okay.
Where did you wind up going to school?
I wound up going to a small little engineering school in Indiana. It's called Rose-Hulman for 2 years. Yeah. Super intense engineering school. Not really great with sports. Although I just saw like they have a punter, a D3 punter. I just saw they have like a D3 punter who may get drafted. which is
lift that up.
But yeah, they were not great with sports. And as I got more and more kind of isolated into the academics portion, I really felt like I needed an outlet for wrestling and doing what I wanted to do there. And so I decided to transfer to Cal Poly.
Okay, so now you mentioned wrestling in there. Did wrestling catch your eye already in college?
Yeah, so I started wrestling when I was a junior in high school.
You
so
did?
Late, yeah.
Okay.
Late. Yeah. So I started.
We got to talk about that for a second.
And they didn't have football, so I was kind of like didn't have much, like really to get my aggression out. I just had a lot of probably aggression I wanted to get out. And so when I first experienced wrestling, I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I actually remember I probably experienced it in 8th grade. And I remember this the most time. I was wrestling around with some kid who knew some wrestling moves, and he put me into what I now know is like basically a chicken wing, right? He's got chicken in the wrist, and I'm thinking I could just get out, and he just pins me, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that was awesome. I mean, that was in my head. I was like, no, but I was like, that was awesome. Like I need to do more of that, but I didn't even really. No one told me, oh, that's you can have that with wrestling. You can go this route and do that. But I just remember that experience of this kid pinning me. And I was just like, wow, how did this kid just pin me? That was crazy to me. And I loved it. There's something deep that was like, oh man, I got to learn what this was. And so, but that was probably in 8th grade. And then I didn't, no one really told me anything about it. But then when I, in junior year, fall of junior year, I experienced it really substantively for the first time. That's why I really fall in love with it.
So that was the one sport your school did have, or did they just happen to have a couple other sports, just not football?
They just didn't have football.
No kidding. That's crazy.
Yeah. Now they do. They've added it, but they didn't at the time.
Yeah. It probably is their moneymaker now. Just guessing.
But. Yeah. I don't know.
Right. Okay. So you wound up getting into wrestling then, but in college, did you carry that through when you especially went to Cal Poly? Did you try to get on the wrestling team there?
Yeah, I was on the wrestling team.
Nice. Okay. So since you just started your junior year, then you go into they didn't have any college wrestling at the school you originally went to, right? No sports. So when you get to Cal Poly, what was that like?
It was good. I mean, it wasn't a great wrestling school. Right. So I was again kind of not in a great great wrestling school. I did have a pretty good high school coach. I thought I had, really pretty good high school coach, man. I'm really appreciative of my high school coach. And he set a really good structure for me. He was great. But then when I went to the college, it was, I don't know. It just didn't. It was just not. It wasn't really paid attention to. It just was not a good structure for success, and I could sense that pretty quickly.
So did you wind up quitting?
No, I transferred to Cal Poly.
Right. So that's what I thought you were talking about right now. Was Cal Poly wrestling there?
Oh no. So then I went to Cal Poly. I was Rose Holman. Then I went to Cal Poly, and Cal Poly. Yeah. Cal Poly was legit, man. I mean, Cal Poly was awesome. Yeah. Cal Poly is outstanding. It's a great school. And man, even the coach now is great. And I had great coaches there. And it was just an awesome experience.
So what was one of the more memorable, I guess, experiences in college wrestling, especially at Cal Poly? What kind of sticks out in your mind the most?
Just going I probably just going in the wrestling room and battling. It was great, And so like now I've started to mature. So I was on my 4th year of wrestling, and now kind of going into my 5th year of wrestling, and 6th year I wrestled there, and I started to go toe to toe with in some of the practice in the practice. I mean, I was probably below 500 wrestler out in Division I ish, but in the practice room, it was just it's just great. It's just a great experience going up against these really, nationally ranked good kids. And that was awesome. And I felt like, hey man, I could take some of these guys down. I could do some damage here.
Did your parents, as far as like, because obviously you tried football, things like that. What were your parents' thoughts on you doing wrestling? Did they have any thoughts on that? Did they think it was a weird sport?
It was super free range parenting, like a crazy.
That's awesome,
dude. It was just like,
that's awesome.
They didn't even get, there was no structure. It was like, you're going off. Okay, I guess he's going off doing that. I remember I used to drive in high school like an hour and a half. It seems crazy to me now. But I would drive to the south side of Chicago to a practice, Marist High School, which had a pretty good practice room in the summer. And it was like an hour 45 drive from.
Oh my God.
And I would just do it.
Yeah. And well, you want it. Right?
No, I had bought my own car. No one said, no one was like, hey, you shouldn't be driving 2 hours there, 2 hours back to the south side of Chicago to go to a practice. Like, there was no one told me anything. I just did stuff.
Yeah.
So it was very free range.
Nice. What were you thinking about towards the end of your college career? What were you majoring in?
I was engineering, mechanical engineering.
Okay. So this is where it gets interesting to me, right? Like I think about what you're doing now, right? That's what's in my head is wrestling media, helping wrestling out, things like that. But you went to school for engineering. It makes me think of my sister-in-law who went to school for zoology, and now she works in IT. Right? It's kind of different. So what were some of the things you were kind of thought process you were going through once you were starting to end college? Did you get a job in engineering? Were you looking at getting a job in engineering?
I remember I bought a suit because I was going to go do some interviews. Nice. And I'm not a suit guy. And I remember wearing the suit, and I went to like one of the open resume, I don't know. I just walked in there. I'm like, what? This feels so weird. And I was like, you go up and you put your name. I was like, God, this is so dorky. And I just left. And I was like, I don't know why I got this. My aunt, she got me the suit. She's like, hey, you gonna go on job interviews, get a suit? And I'm just like, so I just put the suit away. I was like, I don't think this is for me. This is not, me going applying to Boeing is not. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did you wind up getting for a job right out of college? What were you doing right out of college?
I worked with my dad a little bit.
Okay.
His company.
Back to the hard work.
Yeah. Kind of taking all the knowledge I learned around the engineering and the process, applying it there. And then I worked a little bit in another company that I was an owner in, just selling basically time to lawyer, kind of like automating their legal processes, like with the city around like water certifications, zoning certifications, things like that. Nice. And that was, and I didn't enjoy it. And then I was like, all right, I have this idea of what I want to do. And it was how we started with Flow. It was like, the internet was just starting to come off a little bit, Okay. I mean, there's different stages of the internet, right? But like the internet, I was like at this point, I was like, oh, okay, we could maybe do video on the internet. That seemed like a possibility. We could maybe pull that off. And so just started Flow Sports from there.
So you started Flow Sports with family, right? So with your brother, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And was your sister? Were one of your sisters involved in it as well? Kind of got in.
Or my sisters were super critical. They were like my first backers, so they backed me going when I first started. I remember my one sister was pregnant with her second child, and she was going to medical school, and she gave me a $5,000 check. I was like, oh my gosh!
Oh my God!
Thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what was one of the first videos you made?
John Smith.
No kidding.
First videos. Yeah.
How did you get into, I mean, so the video itself, but how did you get in touch with someone like that?
I just went to his office. So 2006, I went and watched the championships at Oklahoma City, and I had this idea of this is what I wanted to do. And then I was already up there. So I don't know if I went there or I went home, but then I went back and I went back and they were freaking just high as freaking can be. I think that was the year they had 5 champs or something.
Oh yeah.
And I came back and I came in the office. I'm like, hey man, this is what I'm doing. I had like a whole like website. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. And he's like, hey, pick a calendar date and come back. And I picked a calendar date and I came back and I took like 8 hours of John Smith's life. I was just like, I had 150 questions and I was just asking. I had tons of questions. Yeah. And that was the first video that I ever did.
Was that
they did Mark Branch?
Nice.
Yeah, Mark Branch. He's awesome. They did Eric Guerrero, and then those are the first 3 videos I did.
Okay, so was it called Flow at that time? Did you call it Flow? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Where did you wind up? Because obviously we know where it went to, but in the early days, because I mentioned Joe Williamson and things like that, when did you guys start kind of building the crew as you went along? Was that just right away? You just grabbed some college guys that you knew, or how did that all work out?
No. I just started grinding. I mean, it was just banging my head against the wall and just going from place to place and getting videos and learning how to do this stuff. Just really doing that. And then certain people would be like, I think Ben Askren introduced me to Joe Williamson. He's like,
okay.
At first time I interviewed Ben, he kind of shrugged me off, and I was like, "Screw this."
Weird.
Yeah. Weird. But then I saw him again. He's like, "Hey man, that was I saw," because he saw what I did. He was like, "Oh dude, I really love what you did." And then he put me in touch with Joe, and Joe was a great addition. And then so then we just went from there, and month after month, year after year, just grinding.
How did you wind up running into Joe K?
Joe Kenya?
Yeah.
Joe Kenya came on. I don't know what year Joe Kenya came on, but it was. I don't know, Joe. What year did you come on?
Pop in, Joe. You can tell us in the comments. We'll keep crawling. Yeah. We'll keep going here, but. So interesting crew. I remember watching it early on when I was a little. It's not like it was forever, but when my kids were younger and I first discovered it, right? I mean, I came up wrestling where you didn't. I mean, it was still what do you call it? Bullpens. So you line up underneath your brackets. You didn't have YouTube, nothing like that to watch it. When I saw this, I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" Because the first thing I saw were the Brands brothers. Right? That was the first thing that I saw, because I grew up loving Iowa, so knowing what was out there, and then my kids were starting to get into wrestling. I was like, this is awesome. So we all started to really dive into Joe. 2017, Joe says 2017.
Okay. Yeah.
But I remember watching it and enjoying it, and like, I can't believe there's this much wrestling media out here, right? You don't think of it in the grand scheme of things like the entire world, but like, it was just seemed like it was so big at the time, right? So watching all the videos, all the live feeds, things like that. Now go further down the road. When did you wind up leaving Flow?
2018.
Oh, geez, not too long after Joe got there.
Yeah.
So when you left, was it just you wanted to start something else? Wanted to do another business? Why'd you wind up leaving?
It was just disagreement on the direction of the company. I'd say with investors. They, some board members were saying, hey, I think they were expecting me to stay. Some people were like asking me, hey, like you got to stay, you got to stay. But I was just like, no, I'm out. And so it was just like, it was just going in a direction that I didn't like.
So when you left, was Rockfin on your brain? Was that something that you're like, there's a better way to do this kind of thing, different media?
No, not really. I was so zeroed in on Flow. So then when I left, it was like, okay, it took a couple months, but I was really interested in how networks form and how they work. And so I spent a couple months just kind of studying that.
Oh, okay. It took a little time, chill out, figure something out. And okay. So when did Rockfin finally hit? Was that a year or two after?
No, just a couple months after.
Oh, and then boom. So because I'm currently trying to create an app right now, which it's not easy, right? Kind of Joe and I are working a little together on it.
Yeah.
But with that being said, and you've gone through Flow, was it easier this time around doing something like Rockfin?
Some ways, yeah.
Okay. All right. So we know where this goes to then. Rockfin is still your thing, right? You still own Rockfin, but now you came up with Boutboard.
Yeah.
And I've been onto it because there's actually an event that my son was in on it. It was the Big Cheese from WI Wrestle.
Oh, yeah, nice.
And didn't really realize anything about it until actually I talked to Joe and then saw you post something about it.
Yeah.
So let's talk. We already talked about it, you and I, but let's bring up the origin story again. I think it was something to the effect you were at a tournament and like just kind of waiting because track went down, right?
Yes. Yeah, I was with my son. It's funny because it's like, we're in Texas, so it's not like we have wrestling everywhere. So it's hard. It's hard to be a wrestling parent here.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? We're gonna get some good looks at this tournament. It's called the Stockyard Stampede. It's in Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, all right, let's go up there, get some good looks. And I'm like looking at the weigh-in schedule, and it's like you can only weigh in the night before. I'm like, or like it was the night before weigh-ins. And I'm like, okay, so that means we gotta weigh in. That means we got to drive up there now and then spend the night and do it.
Yep.
I mean, you could, and so I was like, okay, kind of annoying, but hey, let's make a trip of it. That's good.
Sure.
I have friends up there. Let's go. We'll go out to dinner. Good. Oh, good.
Yeah.
We go and do that. And then the next morning, I noticed like they changed the schedule from the previous year. I need like a personal admin at all times around me because sometimes I read something too fast and I just move and I'm like, oh gosh, that's not. I should be here and I should be there. And so I realized, oh shoot, they changed the schedule from last year. It doesn't start till noon. All right, we'll just go get breakfast and go to a bookstore and then go up. And so then we get there, like whatever, 30 minutes before. And it's like delayed 3 hours. I'm like, oh and my wife calls me. She's like, how did Monroe do? And I'm like, dude, we haven't even started wrestling. I'm like,
that's horrible.
I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I just remember like walking past these other parents and it was just like that 1,000-yard stare of like, oh my gosh, what am I involved in? And so then my son wrestled and it was great once he got going wrestling. He had 5 matches, but a quarter of those kids went 0-2.
Yep.
And another quarter went like 1-2. It's like it was just a realization where I was just like, at the time I was like, I remember I was sitting because the U.S. Open was there too, and I was with Monroe, and my son loves football. We have a great time when we're in Central Texas. It's like football king out here. Yeah. Right. I mean, you got quarterbacks that went to the local high school that are playing in the NFL. And it's like everything is zeroed around football. And you go to the football and it's so organized. It's so nice as a parent. It works. It's like they've put a lot of thought into all these different aspects around football. It's not just a coincidence. Mm-hmm. They think about it and they execute and they put on a great experience for every facet of the stakeholder, whether it's the football player, the parent, the coaches. It's like organized and done right. I mean, I'm sure they have improvements to make, but it's like so far advanced relative to my experience with wrestling as a wrestling parent in Texas. And so, sitting in the stands, I was just like, why am I even doing this? Like, we could just go do football. I mean, I love wrestling, but like, there's other things. Yeah. So I was that was at that point where I was like, either I'm going to do something else or I'm just gonna, I'm going to fix this. And so then I talked to a couple other coincidences happened around that time where I was like, okay, maybe I should be doing this. And so that's when I dived full in.
So that, and I noticed that on there because I've gone into a couple of the different events that have occurred. Yeah. I haven't been on a live event yet, but going through, and I mean, you can go through, you can see who's where, you can click on the match, you can takes you right to the mat where they wrestled, or takes you to the past match, that kind of thing. What type of nuances within your app, the Boutboard app, make it so different from, like, and you can go in and see it, like, visually it's different already, right? But the background of it, the backside of it, what makes it different from the rest, right?
Well, I think it's so I've done, like, I ran my first tournament where I was like, hey, I'm just going to run a tournament, and some guys like, hey man, I want to use the software. I said, yeah, I can use the software. Let's go. It was up the street, so I ran it. And I think one of the things is that everyone just knows what to do. Like, there's not a lot of talking. There's not a lot of questions like, hey, what's going on with this? And we can get better too.
Sure.
But like when you go to it, I think it's a lot clearer of like, hey, what does actually need to happen here? And my goal is to make an element where, a new parent comes in, they're like, they don't have to, like, my sister had her kids wrestle, and she's like, what is, like, you have to, like, go and look and learn, and it's just this really weird element where it's very difficult for someone new to come in the sport. But not only that, I want to make it so that it's incredibly great for, like, the top end of the sport. It's super, super diehards, right? But also you can ease your way into that very easily. In every step of the way, you know what to do. And then through the process, the vision is to put on better events and make sure to communicate to the tournament operators, hey, these are the type of events. These are how many matches you're going to get, right? Are the matches good matches? Are they bad matches?
Okay.
Right? It doesn't do anyone any good if I go out there, my son goes out and 10 seconds gets a pin.
Yeah, right.
He might be reinforcing bad technique in that scenario.
So you're referencing like seeding. Does it do seeding?
No, it doesn't do seeding right now. But our goal is just to make it so that our goal is just to put on better events throughout the whole nation and be able to just assist people in putting on better events.
Because I've only seen it on,
but it's a start.
Yeah, and I've only seen it on the phone side, like in going through there. So I've never seen it on, running a tournament from it or keeping score or anything like that. But what's the because the filters on there are great. You can search for an athlete, I believe. You can there's lots of ways you can figure out where do you need to go and what you're looking for within a tournament. So it's not complicated and it's very simple. You guys have simplified it quite a bit.
Yeah.
On the other side of it, is that something that you plug in your computer and you keep score from it as well?
Oh yeah. So
okay.
The scorekeeper. That each mat keeps the score.
Okay.
And then there's the head table that puts on the bracketing, and the scores feed to the head table.
Are you going to integrate it into Rockfin?
Yeah, we're doing more. We're gonna go more and more on that front. 100%. Yeah.
All right. Well, and I know you got a tight schedule. I wanted to talk about Boutboard. Is there something you want to add about Boutboard that we don't know about that's coming up? Something we should watch for?
Our goal is just continual improvement, like in a really systematic way. We've built a really strong, large foundation so that we can go really high. I kind of think of like, how big of a foundation did you start off with? And we built a really strong foundation. So we might not have every single feature that is out there right now, but we've got a really good base where we can add, where we're going to be adding things pretty methodically as we go. And that's awesome. I'm excited to put on better events and work with other tournaments, work with other organizations to help them put on the best events, to put the best front facing forward for wrestling, and improve how people go and experience events. That's really what our goal is.
Well, and I know us in the wrestling world just does regular Joes kind of out here. We appreciate what you've done so far. I mean, Flow Wrestling to Rockfin to now Boatboard. So we're excited. We here at Vision Quest Podcast are excited. We want to keep following and see what's going on. We follow everything you got going on. We watch your glaringly egregious stuff.
Yeah, nice.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. So we appreciate everything that you do. And like I said, I know you're busy. We want to get out of your hair. Your daughter's got a birthday coming up, so happy birthday to her.
Yeah.
We'll get her a present, but we are going to wind up leaving this here. I don't know if do you have any shout outs, guys, you want to say hi to, tell them to have a great day kind of thing. You got any shout outs at all?
No, I'm good. Shout out to the Texas wrestling community.
Yes.
No.
You are, congratulations. You're the president of Texas USA Wrestling.
Yep. Chairman,
congratulations on that as well.
Yeah.
We appreciate what we believe you're going to be doing down in Texas.
Yeah.
So let's spread that around. So I will leave it at that. It's been another episode of the Vision Quest podcast. I want to talk to you for just a minute once we're done here. Okay. So we're gonna tell everybody peace out, and we're gonna hang it up, and then that's gonna be it. Appreciate it.